Hello, students. Welcome to another session of Mercantile Law. We've been talking about limited liability partnership firms, and till the last class, I've been explaining about the incorporation of a limited liability partnership firm as well as the formalities with regard to change in partners, addresses, names, and whatsoever. Like, what are the formalities? The blind rule is whatever is the change, you have to go to the registrar of companies, uh, fill up the prescribed forms, and then pay the requisite fees, and then accordingly get it altered in the records of the registrar of the companies as well. In case if there is any change in either in the names and addresses or in the constitution of limited liability partnership firms. Now let us talk about the liability. That is the limited liability. Till now we have been talking about limited liability. Now this particular topic 4 is an extension of that. Topic 4 talks about the liability of the partners in a limited liability partnership firm as per the Limited Liability Partnership Act. So definitely a limited liability partnership firm is usually because it's a separate legal entity. That's what I've been stressing on because it's a limited liability partnership firm is a separate legal entity. It is not bound by anything committed by a partner. In case, okay, fine, it is not bound by anything committed by the partner. So, what are those acts? Do we have the specific acts, or is limited liability partnership firm not bound by any acts of the partners? Usually, specific acts. And what are those specific acts? In case if a partner has no authority to do something, like a partner in an LLP had not been authorized to borrow money on behalf of LLP. But in case if he has done so, then LLP will not be responsible, including this. And in case of the person, even if the borrower, that is like the lender, like in this case, bank. So, in case of the bank, also knows that this particular partner who has no authority to borrow on behalf of LLP is borrowing, then in that situation, obviously the LLP is not bound by the act of the partner. Let me illustrate this with an example. Let's say A, B, C are partners in ABC LLP. Okay, except for C, A and B are not authorized to borrow money from banks. Okay, this is as per agreement D. Now A goes to the bank and says, "Sir, Mr. Banker, I have our LLP has certain financial needs, so I want to borrow certain amount." So what will the banker do? Will he borrow it? Will he lend it? Sorry, rather than borrowing, will he lend the money? The banker has its own formalities and own checklist. First thing he'll ask for an LLP deed, then he'll ask for an authorization from LLP showing that A has the power to borrow. Okay. So usually even lenders are very, I can say diplomatic or they are very shrewd rather than diplomatic, very shrewd, they know. So automatically, in case if there is no authorization, the banker will not give any money. In case if the banker or the lender gives the money to A thinking that he is representing the LLP, we'll be talking about it shortly. Yeah, in that case, as to who will be liable, we'll be talking about it shortly. In that case, A himself will be liable. Otherwise, LLP will not be liable. Here, two conditions are paramount or very necessary to make LLP liable for an act committed by a partner. So, what are those two conditions? The first and foremost thing is the partner in question should not have an authority to do that act. And second thing, the third party involved should also know that this partner is not authorized to act. Only when these two things happen, then whatever act had been committed by the partner, then LLP will not be liable. Like in the above example, let's say ABC is an LLP. Only C is authorized to borrow on behalf of LLP, but A goes and borrows money from a bank. The banker also does not check up anything and he gives money to A. In that circumstances, LLP is not liable. Why? Two conditions are fulfilled. What are those two conditions? First and foremost, A is not authorized to act, he is not authorized to borrow, so obviously LLP cannot take responsibility for it. And now the second condition, both have to be fulfilled. The borrower also had not, the lender also had not made any sufficient checks. Lender here is the banker. He hasn't verified whether Mr. A could borrow or not. So when these two conditions are fulfilled, then LLP is not bound by anything done by the partner. So I want you to highlight this particular aspect. So an LLP definitely is not bound by if the partner in fact has no authority to act for the LLP in doing a particular act, and the person knows that he has no authority. These are the most important one. The person knows that he has no authority or does not believe him to be a partner of the LLP. In that case, LLP is not liable. Now, let us talk when LLP is liable. LLP is liable if a partner of LLP is liable to any person as a result of a wrongful act or omission on his part in course of the business. What do you mean by that? See, usually to illustrate this, let's say ABC are partners of LLP ABC LLP. So ABC LLP A had promised to deliver 500 bales of cotton to XYZ and Co. But now A had not made the delivery of those bales of cotton as per Contract Act. In that case, because this is a business, this is a transaction in ordinary course of business, the LLP definitely is liable. So when is this LLP liable? It is liable as a result of any wrongful act, that is malicious act or omission on his part, that is on the part of the partner of LLP in the course of the business of the LLP or with its authority. Compulsory authority should be there. If the partner is not authorized and the other party knows that the partner is not authorized, then LLP is not liable. When is it liable? Liable for the acts committed by the partners in the ordinary course of business. Okay. So, an obligation of the LLP, whether arising in the contract or any other thing, otherwise means any other aspect, okay, shall be solely the obligation of LLP. And the liabilities of the LLP should be met only out of the property of LLP and not out of the property of the partners. Hope I am clear with it. The liabilities of the LLP shall be met only out of the property of the LLP. Then comes the extent of liability of a partner. Usually, a partner is not personally liable. Extent of liability of a partner is, please study it carefully. One of the most important questions. A partner is not personally liable directly or indirectly for an obligation referred to in 27 subsection 3 solely by reason of being a partner of LLP. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? It's not personally liable. It's not personally liable for what aspects, what kind of aspects is that this particular section 27 deal with regard to LLP Act? What does Section 27 deal with it? Looks like there was some problem. Just now we have read. Section 27 says that LLP is not personally liable for an unauthorized act committed by the partner, and even if the third party knows that that the partner is unauthorized to do so. In that situation, a partner is not personally liable directly or indirectly for an obligation referred to in subsection 3 of section 27 solely by reason being that he is a partner of an LLP. So, what do you mean by that? Definitely, even this partner, in case if the third party does not have any knowledge, proper knowledge of LLP, the constitution of LLP, even the partner will also not be liable. What do you mean by that? This might sound a bit rude, but it's a fact. Like, for example, as per section 27, subsection 3, which I have made you underline and read, it says an obligation of an LLP, whether arising in contract or otherwise, shall be solely the obligation of LLP. So, in case if an obligation or a business had been accrued under the status of LLP, then the partner will not be liable for the acts done on account of that business. Let's say, let us say LLP is there. Let's say ABC LLP is there. ABC LLP, because it's a separate legal entity, had come into contract with XYZ saying that they will supply goods on 5th of April. But let's say XYZ, ABC had not supplied goods on XYZ. XYZ had filed a case in court of law, and court of law had asked them to pay the damages. So these damages will not be paid personally by the partners of ABC. Why? This is an obligation incurred by LLP. So from where will the damages be paid? The damages will be paid from the property of LLP. See, when when the LLP is being incorporated, just like company, it will accrue property as well. How will it accrue? From the capital of the partners. So a partner is not personally liable directly or indirectly for what? For any obligation referred to in subsection 3. Any obligation, that's LLP's obligation. However, the 27 subsection 3 subsection 1 shall not affect the personal liability of the partner for his own wrongful act or omission, but the partner shall not be personally liable for the wrongful act or omission of any other partners of LLP. What do you mean by that? See, in case in due course of business, a partner had committed any kind of wrongful act or omission, then automatically this partner will be liable. The other partners and the LLP will not be liable. Hope I'm clear with it. Only this particular partner will be liable. The other partners and the LLP will not be liable. Now let us go to section 29. See, section 29 he has given in a chronological order. This is all one paragraph. What does this particular section tells you? This talks about holding out. Holding out is more like estoppel. Like a person represent himself as a partner in LLP. Then this person is liable to the third party, whosoever he represents, who has given credit to LLP. Whether this person, the person who has represented himself, uh, does know or does not know that the representation has reached the person so giving credit. What do you mean by that? Say XYZ is an LLP. Okay. X, his photo always comes in newspapers saying X partner XYZ LLP and co. So based on it, let's say there is one another firm DEF and Co who wants to come into business. So DEF and Co now wants to supply, or let's say DEF and Co now wants to uh, purchase goods from this XYZ. So for purchasing these goods, because they know X is a partner. Let's say he is one of the famous movie stars. Let's say that. So now, what does DEF and Co is knowing about X? They knowing that X is a partner in XYZ and Co. DEF will give certain advance money for supply of goods to XYZ. DEF is paying an advance to XYZ. Now, who is liable? As per section 29, it says that X would be liable for such transaction. Why? Because he clearly made himself to be known as the partner in an LLB. Okay, and the DEF people have, on based on that particular faith, have given advance to LLP. In that case, X will also be liable. Even though it's the business of XYZ and Co. Just now we have said XYZ LLP. X still will be liable because he himself, he has represented money, he has acted as a partner. He had his conduct is in such a way that the other party, that is DEF, knows that he is the partner of XYZ. So because of that, DEF, because of X only, DEF had decided to do business with XYZ, and DEF had paid advance amount to XYZ for delivery of certain goods. In that case, X will also be liable. X will also be liable. That's what this particular section 29 says. Just now we have discussed under 27 subsection 3, we have discussed saying that obligation of an LLP is only obligation of an LLP. But here, in case if the third party does business looking at the partner of the LLP, money based upon the conduct of the partner, money the way either implied or explicit on the conduct of the party, then he is liable to that particular person. So any person, yeah, who I want this to be properly understood, this particular section 29, bit confusing but very important. Money, any person, any partner who represents money, who shows off like a partner of LLP, and the third party comes into business only because of this because of this partner, then automatically this third partner would also be liable. Who represents himself. I'll just underline one part of it so that it'll be easier for you to understand. Represents himself to be a partner in LLP. If he represents himself to be a partner in LLP, then he is liable to any person. This is very important. Is liable to any person who has, on faith of any such representation, given credit to LLP. Okay, it's irrespective whether this partner or any other person, whether the partner does or does not know that the representation has reached the person so giving the credit. What do you mean by that? Whether the person representing himself does know that the representation had reached the person so giving credit. See, sometimes this means that in case in an advertisement or in a gazette, let's say in an XYZ company, X happens to be a movie actor. So in a gazette, XYZ's photo had been published. Now that DEF had seen XYZ's photo, uh, XYZ photo and plan to have business with the, XYZ. Now, XYZ does not have a knowledge that DEF is entering into business with XYZ only on based on a photograph published in a gazette. But still X will be liable. Why? He had shown himself as a partner of this particular LLP. This is to protect the rights of creditors. Along with this, there are certain benefits. That is, in case if the credit is received by a LLP as of that as a part of this representation, then LLP shall, without the prejudice to the liability of the person so representing himself, be liable to the extent of credit received by it or any financial benefit derived thereon. So, what do you mean by that? See, in case because of the representation of a partner, LLP's got business or funds, then LLP compulsorily should undertake that liability. LLP is also liable along with the partner. But as I told you, that is in case if the business had come on account of a partner's conduct, not on account of direct marketing. If it has come on account of direct conduct of the partner, like why do you think all these movie stars and sports stars are brand ambassadors of all these laptops or any gadgets? Do you think they know or they have knowledge about it? No, people get attracted to them, and because of it they start endorsing those brands, they start purchasing them. So to protect interests of such people, this particular section is there. That's why they have made that particular partner as well as LLP liable by virtue of section 29. And obviously in case of death, partner's death, in case let's say XYZ is an LLP, X had passed, so but still they want to X is dead. So they don't want to just rename the LLP as YZ LLP. They still, if they are still continuing it as XYZ LLP, then then automatically they are not supposed to make this legal representative or estate liable after his death. Let's say in this XYZ LLP, X is dead. So now Y and Z are continuing this LLP, but they don't want to rename, they don't want to change the name. They have just put that XYZ name only and they are continuing the business of LLP. So far, so fine. But now, because X's name is there by virtue of section 29, can the legal representative of X be fined? No. In that case, on account of death of XYZ, the legal representative will not be fined. He will not be liable. Okay. In case of fraud, in case of any act carried out by LLP or its partners and it's a fraud, then everybody will be liable. They'll automatically, their liability automatically will become unlimited, and all the creditors can gain access to their personal property and make good their debts. In the event of an act carried out by LLP or any of its partners with an intent to defraud creditors of the LLP or any person or for any fraudulent purpose, the liability of LLP and partners who acted with an intent to defraud creditors or for any fraudulent purpose shall be unlimited. The liability shall be unlimited for all or any of the debts of other liabilities of LLP. That is limited liability partnership. Obviously, in case if all the partners come together, collide together, commit a fraud, obviously their liabilities is going to become unlimited. Now, say a fraud had been carried out only by a single partner. Then then what is the circumstance? Do you think the other partners of the LLP would be liable? The LLP would be liable. Usually, the other partners and LLP would be liable only if they prove in court of law saying that the fraud was committed without their knowledge. Anyway, but still they'll be liable to a certain extent. This one is an important point. Please understand, in case any act is carried out by a partner, the LLP is liable to a certain extent as the partner unless and until it is established that the act was committed without any knowledge of the LLP and the partner is not authorized to carry on such act. The other 2 points talk about the penalties. In case of any business is carried on with an intent or for purpose mentioned in such case, then automatically imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years and with a fine which shall which shall not be less than 50,000 and will extend up to 5 lakh rupees. Imprisonment for a term up till which may extend up to 2 years and the fine which is which may be around 50,000 to 5 lakh rupees. Okay. So, in case of an LLP or designated partner or employee of an LLP, whosoever has committed the fraud, they should compulsorily pay compensation to any person even before the criminal proceedings start. See, this is as per the act. Yeah, criminal proceedings there or not there whatsoever, the designated partner or any such partner, in case if a fraud had been committed and another person had suffered a loss on account of LLP, just like any other sane rule, definitely they have to pay compensation. In case the LLP need not pay the compensation if it is done by whom? Yeah, the partner, and in case of the partner is not authorized to act upon. Now, let's talk about another interesting section called as whistleblowing. What do you mean by whistleblowing? Whistleblowing is something wherein a partner or an employee of an LLP during investigation. See, what exactly means whistleblowing? Whistleblowing means an employee or an insider of a company is not satisfied with the affairs of the company. So he comes out anonymously and starts talking about the wrongdoings in a company. That is called as a whistleblower. He is the one who starts actually cautioning the other people. In case if there is something incorrect or in case if there is something wrong doing in a particular organization or an LLP or whatsoever, he comes out anonymously and says there's something wrong. Let's say, you have seen these whistleblowers. I'm just giving you an ordinary example. Let's say an employee of a shampoo company is saying that there are parabens which are carcinogenic. That is, they cause cancer. So, in case of a person, an employee of a shampoo company comes out anonymously and says that they are whatever ingredients used in manufacture of a shampoo have parabens which are carcinogenic, he is called as a whistleblower. Okay, hope you have got the meaning of the what whistleblowing means. Now let's go to the section. So usually the court or tribunal is something like a court which but deals only with the affairs, a particular affairs related to a particular act. That is, companies tribunal deals with what companies and LLPs. Or other income tax tribunal deals only with income tax cases and so on. So definitely the court or tribunal may reduce or waive penalty leviable against partner or employee of an LLP if it is satisfied that such partner or employee of LLP has provided useful information during investigation of LLP. That is, in case if the court feels that these people have given useful information and the information given by this partner or employee leads to LLP or any partner of the employee being convicted under this act. Many these whistleblowers, in case because of them the court or the police have been able to unearth a case, then automatically their penalty will be reduced because they have tried their level best to stop a fraud being committed. Automatically, the penalty will be reduced. May reduce. It is not they will reduce, but they may reduce or waive penalty against a partner who supplies information during investigation or what even not during investigation, and that results in conviction of the fraud mongers. So, no partner or employee of LLP may be discharged, demoted, suspended, or threatened. Obviously, when one becomes a whistleblower, automatically the other management might demote him or remove him or suspend him, or he might discriminate. So, obviously, the law says that they are not supposed to discriminate like that. In case if they discriminate, again they'll be imprisoned or they'll be punished in accordance with the provisions of the law. So this is with regard to whistleblowing as per section 31. So because it's an LLP, just like companies, it has to file certain returns with registrar. Why do you need an LLP to file certain registers? of Returns. Returns means nothing. The financial statements, they'll be given to the registrar to verify or to scrutinize whether the company or an LLP is in a working manner or its going concern is not getting affected. So automatically for smooth running of affairs, why? Because it is dealing with public money and public interest. See, if anybody wants to invest in LLP, and tomorrow if LLP without having proper financials, they just close the shop, the interests of the general public will be at stake. So to avoid that, there'll be a continuous monitoring from an authority called as registrar of companies. So what are the returns? How do these registrar of companies monitor LLPs? So let's see about it. So financial disclosures by LLP is our next topic. So what are the major aspects with regard to it? So obviously for any organization to work properly, they need to maintain proper books of accounts. So the LLP should maintain proper books of accounts as may be prescribed. See, you have known, you must have read, you must have done all the problems in accountancy by way of double entry system and so on. So the LLP should maintain proper books of accounts relating to affairs, relating to what? To its affairs. Affairs here means financial affairs on cash basis or accrual basis and according to double entry system of accounting. And these books of accounts shall be maintained at registered office for the prescribed period. See, registered office nowadays, everything is usually done through systems. So, usually at registered office, you'll be having the respective servers. So, LLP should definitely maintain proper books of accounts regarding what? Relating to its state of affairs. So, relating to its state of affairs with regard to what? On cash or accrual basis. And that this cash or accrual basis should be made only on double entry accounting system, and it should be maintained at its registered office. Till there it is fine. Money, it should maintain. In short, it should maintain books of accounts to arrive at its statement of affairs. Then comes statements of accounts and solvency. What do you mean by solvency? Certificate. Solvency is its ability to generate liquid cash. Liquid cash means cash in its true form to meet certain urgent requirements. So statement of account and solvency is usually the cash flow statements. They have to clearly show that they have enough cash for running the business. So every LLP, usually within a period of 6 months from the end of each financial year, should prepare a statement of account and solvency for the said financial year in such form prescribed, and it shall be signed by the designated partners, and this solvency certificate should be filed with registrar every year. Why do you need this cash flow say a statement? As I told you, the public interest is at stake. Why? Because the liability of the partners of an LLP is limited. So the public interest is at stake. So to monitor and to verify a proper working of an LLP, usually, not usually, it's mandatory for an LLP to file a statement of solvency, yeah, with the registrar every year in the prescribed format. Okay, every year they should file it in a prescribed format. I don't know why this has gone. Yeah, prescribed format. This will be asked, it's an important part of your thing. And this LLP accounts definitely shall be audited. The accounts of an LLP should be audited in accordance with the rules as may be prescribed. Some classes of LLP may be exempt, and those classes of LLP which are exempt will be provided by central government in its official gazette. The fifth point deals with penalties in case if an LLP fails to comply with the provisions of the section, then automatically it will be punished with a fine not less than 25,000 rupees and which may extend up till 5 lakh rupees, and every designated partner of such LLP shall be punished with a fine of not less than 10,000 rupees and might extend up till 1 lakh rupees. The next one talks about annual returns. What do you mean by annual return? Annual return means all this balance sheet, profit and loss account, cash flows, details about the partner's net worth, and other statements as may be prescribed by the registrar. So these annual returns should be duly authenticated, means signed by the authorized partner, should be filed with the registrar within 60 days of closure of its financial year. That is, in case of the financial year closes by 31st March, then this annual return should be filed by 31st May by an LLP or in any manner as may be prescribed. In case if an LLP complies with the provisions of this section, then they shall be punishable with a fine of not less than 25,000 and that may extend up to 5 lakhs. Yeah, same thing goes with the designated partner. That is, here they talk about the fines which are imposed on the designated partner. The next aspect talks about the conversion of a firm or a public limited company or an public private limited company or a public unlisted company into an LLP and what are the specific schedules. As per section 55, a firm, that is a partnership firm, can be converted into an LLP, and the provisions are given where they are given in second schedule. Can a private company be converted into LLP? Yes, it is given in section 56 and third schedule. You have to memorize the schedules. Same thing. In case it is given in the fourth schedule. That is in case of unlisted public company. Okay. So the same procedure holds good on account of registrar on satisfying that the firm or a private company or an unlisted company has complied with the provisions as given in the schedules. Then they will register the documents, issue a certificate of registration as the registrar may determine, stating that LLP is registered. Simple. Following these particular guidelines as given in these schedules, that is private company second schedule, firm second schedule, private company third schedule, and unlisted company fourth schedule. If they follow the guidelines given there, definitely they'll convert the same into a partnership. They'll convert it into LLP. Then after that particular entity had been converted into LLP, then within 15 days of registration, the LLP this is important, within 15 days of registration, inform the concerned registrar of firms or registrar of the companies as the case may be with which it was registered under the provisions of Partnership Act or Companies Act as the case may be about the conversion and of the particulars. This is an important point. Another aspect, once they have been converted, automatically they have to say, no, they have to inform their old heads. That is what in case of partnership firm, it is registrar of firms. In case of a company, it's registrar of companies. They have to tell them within 15 days of conversion and inform them. After that conversion, in case if the firm had been converted into LLP, then the partners, in case if the company had been converted into LLP, then the shareholders uh, they'll be bound with the sections of LLP as applicable to them. As such, he has not discussed over here. You can just write once it has been converted, they'll be bound by LLP Act. Now they can't go and say that we have been following Companies Act. And the effects of conversion would be in accordance with the various schedules as have been mentioned. So, what happens? What is the effect of the registration? Notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force on and from the date of uh, registration, from the date of registration. So, what will happen? Now, the particular entity, whatever, whether a partnership firm or a company, it will be named as LLP under this act, and all the tangible and intangible property vested in the firm or the company, as the case may be, and whatever all assets, interests, rights, and obligations relating to the firm or the company, as the case of may be, now will be vested to limited liability partnership firm. Here he doesn't need any specific act or deed. It is automatically and directly converted. And definitely, once they have informed these people, that is the registrar of firms or registrar of companies, automatically this will be dissolved. That is, within 15 days, once after information, it is deemed to be dissolved. Then foreign LLP, I just told you, foreign LLP means what? In case if if an LLP, if an LLP had been incorporated in any other country and but still it is carrying the business in India, then it is called as a foreign LLP, and the central government shall make rules for provisions in relation to the establishment of place of business. Who makes rules and regulations for this? The central government. Regarding what? Regarding the place of business, carrying on the business, incorporation, modifications, and the provisions of company as appear appropriate, and the provisions of Companies Act 1956 or such regulatory mechanism with such composition as may be prescribed. What do you mean by that? That is, in case if it is a foreign limited liability partnership firm, they may make sufficient rules or provisions with regard to the provisions of Companies Act 1956, because there are certain regulatory aspects which have been mentioned in that with regard to foreign LLPs. Now that the Companies Act 1956 stands cancelled, so they might take out certain provisions from that. Who has the right to do all these things? The central government. So today I'll close my topic with this. We'll be talking about winding up and dissolution and miscellaneous aspects, and we'll end up with the differences between LLPs and partnership firms and the companies. Okay. With this, I close my class today. In case of any doubts, please let me know. Thank you all.